Hello and welcome to Want to Hear Something Weird? A podcast about weird, wild, maybe even wonderful stuff. I'm one of your hosts, Tom Reynolds.
And I'm Laura.
When we come across strange stories, we love sharing them with one another, and now we invite you, the listener, to indulge in the curiosity of the bizarre and unexplained along with us. Laura, today I wanted to tell you about something weird that I came across from 1561.
Whoa, that's really back there.
It's a long time ago. And this is a pretty well-known event, I would say, for being all the way back in 1561. Mm-hmm. I don't know too many other things that happened in 1561.
Paranormal wise?
Anything wise. Actually, I can't really, nothing's coming. I know Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492.
That's right.
That's about, and even that was a good, 60
quick math
years ago.
But this was like the time of the Tudor period, King Henry VIII.
Yeah, medieval times, right? Is this considered medieval time? Oh, it is the Renaissance.
Okay.
That's what it's considered all over the world. And especially in Nuremberg, Germany.
Okay.
Famous for later having trials after World War II with a bunch of Nazis and stuff. But before then, it was famous for a different reason. And that was because they had quite the celestial event happen there one morning.
Now, what is a celestial event, just broadly speaking, for the listener's sake?
I think in this case, a celestial event is about as best as they could describe what they saw, which was essentially a bunch of weird stuff happening up in the sky.
Okay, so stuff happening in the sky.
Stuff happening in the sky. I guess maybe I should start with what the newspaper, the broadsheet, how they recounted the events.
Oh, yes.
This is translated. I'm not going to read it in its original German.
The German.
No. In the morning of April 14th, 1561, at daybreak, between 4 and 5 a.m., a dreadful apparition occurred on the sun, and then this was seen in Nuremberg in the city, before the gates and in the country, by men and women. At first, there appeared in the middle of the sun 2 blood-red semicircular arcs, just like the moon in its last quarter. And in the sun, above and below and on both sides, the color was blood. There stood a round ball of partially dull, partially black ferrous color. Likewise, there stood on both sides and as a torus about the sun such blood-red ones and other balls in large number, about 3 in one line and 4 in a square, also some alone.
Oh, goodness. This is
not like a machine translation or anything, by the way. This is, I think, just kind of the way text was back then. Not everybody was super literate, and I think they maybe just kind of like had to really spell things out. Because I feel like so far this description's not painting a picture.
I was going to say I have no idea what's happening.
Well, I'll continue and then I'll paint a picture myself.
Okay. Could you take us back? What's a broadsheet?
A broadsheet is, well, I'm going to talk about the broadsheets in general a little bit later, but essentially a newspaper.
Yes.
This is right around when the printing press became like a big deal.
The old Gutenberg?
The Gutenberg press, but I don't know if Gutenberg had anything to do with the Nuremberg press, despite their similar sounding names.
I see.
But yeah, a similar type of press, I think. In between these globes, there were visible a few blood-red crosses, between which there were blood-red stripes, becoming thicker to the rear, and in the front malleable like the rods of reed grass, which were intermingled among them 2 big rods, one on the right, the other on the left, and within the small and big rods there were 3, also 4, and more globes. Now it's here where it's, again, that's kind of hard to picture, but it starts getting interesting here. These all started to fight among themselves, so that the globes, which were first in the sun, flew out to the ones standing on both sides. Therefore, the globes standing outside the sun and the small and large rods flew into the sun. Besides, the globes flew back and forth among themselves and fought vehemently with each other for over an hour. And when the conflict in and again out of the sun was most intense, They became fatigued to such an extent that they all, as said above, fell from the sun down upon the earth as if they burned, and then they wasted away on the earth with immense smoke. After all this, there was something like a black spear, very long and thick, sighted. The shaft pointed to the east, the point pointed west. Whatever such signs mean, God alone knows. Although we have seen shortly one after another many kinds of signs on the heaven, which are sent to us by the Almighty God to bring us repentance, we still are, unfortunately, so ungrateful that we despise such high signs and miracles of God. So now he's getting into, kind of shaming people, saying it's your fault all this weird stuff's happening in the sky. Or we speak of them with ridicule and discard them to the wind in order that God may send us frightening punishment on account of our ungratefulness. I'm going to skip the rest. It just kind of goes into a bunch of God stuff. Here's the picture I'm going to paint for you.
Yes, please do.
And there's a famous woodblock printing of this, of everything that went down, so that it didn't need to be explained in such excruciating detail.
And then my next question, what's a woodblock printing?
A woodblock printing was a popular form of capturing an image at the time and disseminating it. So They didn't have cameras back then.
They didn't.
They didn't have cameras.
No smartphones.
Not even black and white cameras at the time. That's how far back they were. So otherwise it would be, all right, well, we got to show everybody what this looked like. I guess I'll draw 10,000 pictures. Now, come on, that's going to take too much work. So what they would do is carve like a relief out of wood that then they could put ink on top of and put paper on top of. Basically, they made a wood block is like a giant stamp.
I see.
So there's a wood block of this that was part of this broadsheet that just shows kind of all hell breaking loose in the sky. Just a bunch of rods, a bunch of balls. They're shooting things at each other. There's like a big arrow in the sky. There's red burning crosses. And then there's also off in the distance, kind of like smoke rising up from the ground where supposedly, according to witnesses, something crashed.
They got fatigued and they crashed to the ground and smoked.
Yeah. So obviously this caused a lot of confusion.
I would say so. I think that would be shocking and startling by many men and women.
By men and women. They didn't mention, I guess it's too early for children to be up between 4 and 5. So,
are you kidding? They're up, milking cows.
Yeah, that's true. They're
feeding the pigs,
putting them in the chimney, sweep out the chimneys because they're little. So celestial events were an interesting thing at the time because we were kind of starting the royal I wasn't back there, of course, figuring out
as far as you know.
As far as I know, we started figuring out some stuff about the sky and the stars and all of that. Up until around this time, they thought, okay, everything that's up there, like the stars, the sky, that's that. The moon can change when it's, turning around us and stuff. But the stars, they don't change. That's just kind of they turn, of course, but where they are, that's it.
Right. So because they could tell that the moon would move.
Right.
Stars wouldn't.
Well, the stars would move, I guess, but they could chart their course.
You're right. They all stayed relatively in the same place relative to one another.
Right. We thought we had it all down. We thought, okay, this is great. The stars, we get it. We know what they're up to. But then in 1592, which is, after this, but in the same time period, there was something called Tycho's supernova. So this was a Danish astronomer named Tycho Brahe, Brahe, Brahe?
Your guess is as good as mine.
Oh, no, he was Danish. He found, or I guess he didn't find it because I guess a lot of people saw it. There was a supernova. I believe when I was reading about this, they said it was one of 12 supernovas that was visible throughout human history.
Oh.
So supernova is when a star dies and explodes.
Yes.
And we know from, I guess, looking at the stars and stuff, when these things happen. This was one of the few times it happened while humans were around. And was also one of the best documented because people saw it in the sky. It was so bright that you would be able to see it during the day too. I don't think they could really see any it's not like they saw like in the Star Wars movies where like the Death Star is exploding and everybody can see it. I think it just looked like a very bright star. But again, so bright it was visible during the day. It caused a lot of people to go like, maybe we don't know everything about what's going on out there.
And when did this event happen in relative to the event we're talking about today?
This event happened about 30 years later. 29 years later was
the
Tycho's supernova.
Okay.
But like I said, the 16th century, a period of significant advancement spurred by individuals like Copernicus, Tycho, and later Kepler. Those are all names, well, except for Tycho that we know to this day. And it was also like a big thing in Renaissance art.
Okay. So yeah, I would imagine these kinds of events would cause a lot of, creative people to document them in their creative outlets.
Yeah. And just try to, I think, probably get to the bottom of what's going on. And, if this is some kind of sign from God, a lot of times they thought it was like a bad omen, some kind of a warning. I forgot to mention, let me see if I have it here when this happened. 1554. So 7 years earlier. The same woodcut artist.
Oh.
And I think he also like kind of wrote what was in the broadsheets.
Okay.
He also reported on the time it rained blood in Nuremberg.
Oh, so a lot's going on in Nuremberg at this time.
It started raining blood, which, it kind of freaked people out.
I'd say so.
We now know that when that happens, when it rains blood, that
naturally
it's not actually blood. It's, I think a lot of times it's like dust or fungus. Okay. Kind of in the air, and then it gets trapped in the rain droplets and comes down.
Right.
But again, they didn't know all this stuff. So you're living in Nuremberg, one day it rains blood and you're like, well, I guess that's the weirdest thing that's ever going to happen.
Like that I would imagine would be a very bad omen.
Yeah.
Or
even nowadays, if it started raining blood, I'd be a little freaked out about it. So I don't know if this guy, Hans Glaser, the woodcut artist, if he was just kind of like, I don't know, real into weird stuff, if he was like the Robert Stack of his day, or if it was just a lot of weird stuff happened in Nuremberg and, he was just capturing it.
He just happened to be there and be the one that knew how to cut wood.
How to cut wood. It was hard because you have to like kind of do it in reverse, because it's like a negative image.
Right.
Seems pretty tricky to do. And like I said, this woodcut is bonkers, everything that's going on in there. So not only that, a few years later, what is this, 5 years later? In 1566, in Basel, Switzerland.
Okay.
Just a few years later, similar occurrence, according to an account by Samuel Coccius, Coccius. Students and townspeople saw large black globes moving at high speed in the sky, engaging what appeared to be a battle similar to the Nuremberg event.
Interesting. I wonder what the actual distance is between those two places, but the fact that it's happened in two places.
Well, and also I should mention in Basel in 1566, it happened 3 times. It happened on July 27th, 28th, and they thought everything was over. And then August 7th, it happened again against the sunrise and sunset.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's freaky.
Right. And I'm guessing the Nuremberg, that was between 4 and 5 a.m. That must have been around sunrise too.
Right.
Which, I mean, we'll get to. There's some possible natural explanations for this. But it does make you think, oh, was this something that was going on up there that people couldn't see unless the sun was going up or down, and then it kind of reflected
like it was constantly going on, but
there were
they just
battles
couldn't
going on all the
visualize.
time above them, but they were quiet battles. And sun's in the right place though, and it outs them. But then the battling aliens go like, all right, well, who cares?
Oh, aliens.
Well, it could have been. Who else could have been battling up there?
I don't know.
I mean, it's aliens
Gods?
or gods and they just believed in one God. So they thought it was just God, I don't know, kind of like showing off for them or trying to get them to
warn them.
Tell them what they're doing is no good.
Do we know anything about Nuremberg at this time? That what's life like? What could they possibly think could be an explanation for something that they need to be punished for?
Oh, yeah. So they are at this time a free imperial city in the Holy Roman Empire, which means they're not directly subject to like an emperor or anything, or they are directly subject to the emperor in Rome, but they don't have like an intermediate lordship or anything like that. They kind of are somewhat autonomous. They have special political status and significant autonomy, but this is also during the Reformation.
Before you get to that, let me ask you a question that no one has ever asked another person, certainly not a woman asking the man in her life. How often do you think about the Roman Empire?
Oh, how often do I think? I've been thinking about it a lot today when I was reading about this. Other than that, I don't think about the Roman Empire all that often, to be honest with you.
I'm with you. But I think maybe I should think about it more.
The last time I thought significantly about the Roman Empire, it was at a museum. And I was looking at like Roman helmets, that the soldiers wore. And they look like the helmets in 300. That the guys with the abs and the pecs that they would wear. And they had, sorry, you were going to say something?
Well, I was going to share the time I thought the most about the Roman Empire.
When was that?
I went to the Roman baths in Bath, England.
Okay.
Thought about it a lot then because
Are they the same baths?
They are. The same baths. The baths that they built are still there. You can go and visit them.
Can you go inside and take a bath?
I mean, you certainly could take a dip. There's water there. No one did.
Okay.
It's not
Did they tell you
encouraged.
not to? Don't go in there. That's for ancient people.
Yes.
I saw a video recently of some idiot diving into Elvis's pool in Graceland, and he got in trouble for doing that.
Oh. Is it like blessed water that?
I think it's probably just like, we don't want idiots diving into this pool. We're not insured for that. But anyway, when I thought about the Roman Empire, I was looking at these two helmets. And it was like, this helmet's from this time. This helmet's from like 300 years later. And I'm looking at it and going like, they didn't really improve this helmet all that much. And it made me think, maybe the Roman Empire is a little overrated. You hear about all the cool stuff they had going on back then, but it sounds like, I don't know, they weren't improving things like at a rapid pace.
I'm sure that you're going to get a lot of flack for saying that.
Look, I'm just saying, if I were back there, I'd say, hey,
sure.
How about putting some padding in these helmets, guys? I don't know how good this is if you get hit with a sword and it just knocks you unconscious. So anyway, the religious reformation's going on. So the Protestantism is coming about. It's, challenging the Catholic Church's dominance.
Right, like Martin Luther and all that. Yeah.
But the city, Nuremberg's like a very wealthy city. It's got great architecture. It's got a lively art scene.
Okay.
And keep in mind, not everything is great during this time. It's the 1500s. Everything still sucks. There's like the plague.
Everyone smells. Everyone's hungry. Everyone's cold.
Yeah, except for the people in Nuremberg, I guess.
Killing each other.
Yeah. They were doing well enough that they didn't really have to worry about this stuff.
Maybe just the upper crust, though.
Yeah.
We only ever hear about the upper class in these types of...
Yeah. Well, so these broadsheets, it was basically like one big piece of newspaper,
Mm-hmm.
and they were, printed cheaply. I think they were relatively cheap to get, and they're one of the first forms of mass media
Mm-hmm.
because there was a growing literate middle class, but then there were also people that weren't literate. There were often like public readings of the broadsheets. Sometimes it was, the people that made the broadsheets, they would, kind of read them out, at a corner or whatever as like a little teaser. You want to hear more about that crazy stuff that happened by one of our broadsheets.
I love this stuff. Just
broadsheets?
Just, the history of mass media. It's just so interesting. And also, I would imagine this is sort of how the Reformation came to be because they were able to,
print
easily
out
communicate,
pamphlets and stuff, and get stuff out there. Well, and also like the Catholic Church believe around this time, it was still kind of like the church didn't want you to like have your own Bible at home that you could just read up. It was the priest will tell you how to interpret this. We don't need you interpreting your own stuff.
Okay.
Because there just wasn't, it wasn't reasonable to own your own Bible. There was, somebody would have had to sit down and write the whole copy it from another source for you. What I also thought was interesting about these broadsheets, this broadsheet in particular, this was reported, the broadsheet came out April 14th. This happened April 4th.
Oh.
It was not quick or easy to make these woodcuts.
Mm-hmm.
So even when they like would put a rush on it, it would still take days to make a woodcut.
Hans Glaser pulling some all-nighters, whittling away at this wood.
Because he's like, this is hot news. I got to get this out.
I mean,
right away.
I think a 10-day turnaround in the 1500s is pretty solid.
You think? I mean, I would think if I woke up, it would be fine if I hadn't seen it. But if I saw this myself, I'd be spending those next 10 days going, why isn't this in the broadsheets? This is huge news. There was either a space battle or God came to warn us about something. And, these guys take their sweet time. I don't know what else was being. It sounds like the broadsheets, it was kind of like a lot of gossip and stuff like that, too. It was, whatever people wanted to actually hear about. That's what they would read about in the broadsheets. Also of interest to me, at least, this guy, this kind of has nothing to do with the actual event, but Hans Wolf Glaser, he was married and then he died. And in 1557, his widow married Wolf Dressel, former apprentice of her husband, who continued Glaser's workshop and continued to use his printing blocks.
Wow.
Using his wife and a man's wife and a man's printing blocks.
My first thought is, what an incredible opportunity for a historical fiction romance novel.
Oh, yeah.
If maybe that already exists.
Right. The Hans being driven mad by seeing this sky battle while neglecting his wife. And then
she's forced into the arms of his apprentice.
The arms of Wolf. Maybe that'll be the name of the ink-stained arms of Wolf. I think this was also back during the time when it was like, hey, when I die, take care of my wife, please. Please marry my wife.
Yes, well, because she'll be destitute.
Otherwise, she'll just die out in the gutter.
Yeah. They didn't have gutters, probably.
They probably had like some natural gutters that had been formed. But yeah, I mean, that's basically it. That's what I wanted to tell you about.
So
I think, I mentioned that there might be some actual explanations for this. One of the big ones is a sundog. Do you know what a sundog is? And this isn't I'm not trying to get you with do you know what updog is?
Oh, thank you for clarifying that. Sundog. No. Sundial? Sun or hot dog?
No, sundog. So it is a natural event that happens basically when there's a lot of ice crystals in the sky, which, can happen before dawn.
Mm-hmm.
And also usually happens at dawn or sundown when the sun is low in the sky. And basically, it is a trick of the light, I guess, where the light from the sun is refracting off these ice crystals in a very weird way that creates kind of a circle around the sun to the left and the right of the sun. It creates what are sometimes known as false suns, where it looks like there are two other suns in the sky because this is reflecting, the actual sun. Very weird looking phenomena, which can certainly explain part of what was going on in this, but it does not explain to my satisfaction.
Where's the dog in that description?
It's
sounding a bit like Fluffy from Harry Potter, the three-headed dog.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess it's 3, but
maybe like 2 ears and a big head or something.
Now, I looked it up on Wikipedia, and there is like a entomology, right? That's the study of words, not the study of bugs. But apparently nobody really knows why it's called a sun dog. Now, that would explain seeing multiple suns in the sky, but that would not explain, and maybe even the arcs and whatnot, and like the sun being a weird color, but that does not explain rods and balls flying around and fighting each other and then crashing to the earth.
And I would imagine, these things that apparently crashed the earth, they just kind of blew up and no one was able to find any sort of...
That was part of the original article.
Oh, okay.
Was that, and when the conflict in and again out of the sun was the most intense, they became fatigued to such an extent that they all, as said above, fell from the sun down upon the earth as if they all burned, and they then wasted away on the earth with immense smoke. So it sounds like they essentially like self-destructed or disintegrated once they landed on Earth. Now, no, I would assume, again, this is not the best reporting. Newspapers were a brand new thing. They only had so much room.
There wasn't a strict code of journalistic integrity.
No, there was no, I don't think maybe they even had the idea like, we should interview people about things. Because I'm thinking if this happened, there's got to be 1 or 2 crazy guys that go, we're going to go see what that is. We're going to go follow that smoke and see what we can find.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm guessing because this article is saying that they wasted away, that nobody found anything, or they just found, smoldering wreckage, not even wreckage, just kind of like a hunk of ash.
Yeah.
And they assumed... Which does, you have to think if aliens are coming to visit Earth, especially in 1592, even if they're having some kind of Star Wars in the sky, they've got to have some kind of agreement like, hey, everybody, if your spaceship crashes on Earth, set it to self-destruct mode, because otherwise it will really freak these German peasants out down there. They can't even read, let alone comprehend aliens from another galaxy or whatever.
So are there, I would think, trying to imagine what it would be like to be, a person who looks up at the sky at 4 a.m. and sees this, and how you explain this, because obviously for 10 days, before it was even in the broadsheet, they're talking amongst each other, like, what could that have been? And so they think that,
there's probably a line out the confession booth and down the block at the church.
Yeah, maybe it was a big stunt by the Catholic Church to get people.
Good, to hey, quit thinking about that Protestantism. Look, you're making God so mad he's throwing rods down at the earth.
I would imagine that would really affect a lot of people. Genuinely.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
If they were thinking about potentially leaving the church or something, or having these ideas,
right? They're coveting their neighbor's wife or something, and then this happens. I think about that all the time, even with things like
coveting their husband's
apprentice. Even with things like eclipses, I think, man, back before we knew what that was, so many people must have gone, oh, the world's ending.
Right.
that I've been alive for 30 years or whatever, and I've never seen this happening. The sun's going away during the day.
Yeah.
Well, I guess this is it. Pack it up. God's really pissed at us.
And even, I mean, these events that have happened around the time, even though they are in a broadsheet or the information is being disseminated.
Yeah.
The general public can't read. I mean,
Right.
you do have to be, only certain people could read. So it's not like everybody is getting this information and is on the same page.
Well, and the information they're getting is this was God. You made him mad.
Yeah.
So it's
Shape
not.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I should point out, if it wasn't clear, that, at no point seemingly did anyone in Nuremberg go, hey, I think that could be aliens. And I don't think they really thought about aliens at all.
That's a more modern look back at it.
So it's the kind of thing where it's been this historical record of this like weird, wacky thing. And, there are other historical records similar to this where we now know, oh, here's what happened. And that's why they all thought the world was ending or whatever. It was this weird celestial event that we now understand. This would happen with like comets at the time too. They would say, oh, an angel appeared tonight. But yeah, none of them stopped even for a minute to think it could be aliens. This is our interpretation in modern day, looking back at this weird event that there still isn't a complete explanation for, and going, maybe that was aliens. And and it would make sense that this is how they would describe seeing UFOs fighting each other.
Yes. Right. Interesting.
Yeah. So that's Nuremberg in 1561. Do you think they would be more incredulous seeing this in the sky, or if you went back then and showed them an iPhone?
Okay, well.
What do you think would scare them more?
I remember watching the incredible piece of cinema, Xenon, Girl of the 21st Century, on the Disney Channel.
Okay.
In the 90s, early aughts.
And just constantly being blown away by the technology from...
Absolutely. There is a scene where the protagonist is on the
protagonist is Xenon, I assume. Okay.
And she's a girl of the 21st century.
But she's in the present day, which is the 90s.
No.
Oh.
She's in the 21st century.
Okay.
And I want to say it takes place in like 2040. I could be wrong, but that's what I'm thinking. It's in the future, but not so far in the future.
Right.
And she's on a satellite? No,
a space station?
Yes.
Orbiting the Earth.
She's living on a space station, and she's essentially FaceTiming her best friend on Earth. Holding, what looks like kind of like an iPad, and just able to talk to her friend. And it blew my mind. And I just couldn't believe that, and I just didn't think that would ever happen in my lifetime. I was just like, that's incredible that you could just like talk to talk to a person on a phone. And
with no wires.
And no wires. Yeah.
And you could even be in space and it's fine.
Yeah. So, I mean, iPhones are pretty incredible. I gotta say, I think if I was back then, I would I just wouldn't have the understanding of what that would be.
Yeah. If somebody started
handed that to me
Angry Birds.
Or just like showing pictures of people that or places you've been on the phone, it would just be absolutely mind blowing.
TikTok filter.
Yeah. Oh, forget it.
I don't know if they would work without a signal. There are all these not all of these, but there's
You mean in this time traveling scenario where you bring an iPhone back, they can have a Wi-Fi signal?
Yeah. Well, there's a video, I think it's an old Charlie Chaplin movie or something, where somebody's walking down the street and it looks like they're on a cell phone.
Oh, yeah.
And, it's one of these things that they're like, look, proof that time travel exists. This person's on a phone. But it's like, how are they talking on the phone? There's no T-Mobile back then to put a signal out.
Yeah.
And if they're from the future, guess what? In the future, nobody talks on their cell phones. We just text on them.
Yeah, well, that's true.
That person wasn't from the future. They were from, I don't know, the early 2000s.
We just wanted to take a second to thank you for listening. Want to Hear Something Weird is a new podcast, and we're trying to get the word out about the show and reach listeners who like good stories about weird stuff. If you're enjoying the show, we'd love if you could subscribe and take a moment to give us a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. 5-star ratings really help to surface our show to new listeners, and if you really want to help the podcast, writing up a little review along with that rating goes a very long way. That would be amazing. Thank you.
We're also super excited to hear from our listeners. You can tweet at us at WannaHearPod or follow us on Instagram at WannaHearPod. But really, we'd love any feedback, comments, or suggestions you want to email our way. We're at wannahearpod@gmail.com. If you want to email an audio note, we just might play your voice on an upcoming episode. All right, that's it for this week. If you like the show, why not leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify? That would really help us out. A new show like us.
A 5-star review.
A 5-star review. Boy, I couldn't imagine anything better than that. You can also follow us at WannaHearPod on all the social medias you could ever imagine.
And email us at wannahearpod@gmail.com. Send us your thoughts. Send us what you're thinking. What you're loving.
Spooky.
Be nice, please.
Spooky videos, spooky
I don't know.
images, spooky audio. You can even send us a voice memo if you've got some kind of a wacky story to tell us. We'd love to hear it.
Want to Hear Something Weird is a Clamor audio production distributed by the Cloud 10 Network. Hosted and executive produced by Tom Reynolds and Laura Anderson. Executive produced by Aaron Hilliard, Clamor General Manager Rich Statter, Associate Producer Ethan Aronson, Post-Production Supervised by Devin Ruskin, Production Assistant Samara Molek. Special thanks to Sim Sarna and Saiba Krieger at Cloud 10.
Seeking the truth never gets old. Introducing June's Journey, the free-to-play mobile game that will immerse you in a thrilling murder mystery. Join June Parker as she uncovers hidden objects and clues to solve her sister's death in a beautifully illustrated world set in the Roaring '20s. With new chapters added every week, the excitement never ends. Download June's Journey now on your Android or iOS device, or play on PC through Facebook Games.